Episode 100. Now, that may be kind of strange because the first episode of this program began December 2021. And I've just been firing them out. So I'm pretty sure that there are already more than 100 episodes, but when the episodes got filtered through the episode list to air on air, the numbers got mixed up and lost or whatnot. So from the records that I do have, which I do know that there are more than 100 yet to catch back up, this is the recorded, the reported, the written, as I have it, episode 100 of Justification. So it's kind of crazy. Been going for almost 2 years now, and the response has been interesting. And it's really funny going back and looking at that first episode. The message of it is still like the message throughout, which is your personal devotional conversation handling the things that are in the scriptures, or are you getting whatever you're getting concerning your devotional conversations outlook from sources outside of your experience? And so that very first episode was about the liberty found in exercising the conscience of the conversation. And that has been the theme throughout. And so for this episode, I'm just going to review, or to just meditate on what these, I can now say years, what these years of almost 2 years of Justification being in play and having an audience, what these years have meant to the idea of justification and to the ideal experience that the Bible is advertising. And we've spent a long time, a very long time, it seems, going through the idea, the concept of male and female, which has drawn reactions and responses that I absolutely love. Absolutely love. Because we don't really think about these things. We don't really think about what's written in the context of what is written. We're reading these things that are within the Bible from a Western point of view. We're reading these things from within the Bible from the point of view of our own devotional opinion, or from our own spiritual stance, or whatever you want to say, what we want to call ourselves. That's how we're reading these things. But when you allow the Bible to speak for itself, not inserting yourself within it, allowing it to just flow, and trust it will take many years before, if you are caring for the Bible to speak to your devotional conversations, thoughts, and feelings, you actually begin to understand the concept within the scriptures. And so from the first episode until this point in time, you have me, someone studying, who has been studying the Bible for more than 14 years. More than 13, more than 14 years. I can't even remember. But you have somebody here that's talking about Bible. And that's it. Strictly talking about Bible. And the language of that will not come across to individuals, or to an individual that does not know Bible, that only knows Christian, that only knows half Christian, that only knows lukewarm Christian, that only knows religious world, that only knows theosophy, that only knows theology, that only knows the, or theos, instead of the living mind that set all things into place, inspiring the words therein. And so what I want to do is just talk about all of that. 100 episodes, supposedly, at least as it is written, to just chill and to just dialogue about what this show and what we have been reviewing means and has meant thus far. So I can remember beginning this program and looking at the meaning of justification, what it means in Hebrew, what it means in Greek, and then what it means as illustrated through the context within the Bible, and then putting all three of those things together to form a concrete sort of hypothesis to examine, of which we have been doing and of which we have been proving to be beyond true. The idea of justification, I'll just say, I guess I'll just go back and start when I was asked to do a program and to come up with an idea for what a program should be called, because it would be aired to more than 1 million people. And so being thrown into that and trying to come up with something, I really couldn't come up with anything. And then I thought about the book that I just published at that time, which was called Justification. And the idea was to go through that book's theme, point by point, to articulate the position of the Bible concerning the regeneration and the resurrection and the Reformation, the transformation of the conversations, thoughts, feelings, actions, and behaviors. And so setting out on that journey, well, then a whole lot more began to unwind, because all of a sudden now I started to get feedback and comments. And now the episodes I'm tailoring for the audience that's reaching out to me and for their curiosity, and the subject is just growing and growing and growing. Everything still that is within my book, sure, but now having this, I can articulate beyond what is within my book. The philosophical scope that is written therein can now find illustration. That illustration can have dialogue, and that dialogue doesn't have to happen immediately. And that was another thing, is that you have to create immediate without immediately creating. And so the idea of justification just was immediate. To go forward with that idea and that concept for the purpose of acknowledging so many questions that I have been getting prior to this, prior to the start date of December 2021, which actually started filming in November 2021, but airing prior to this, in the years prior, the different questions that I had and the conversations of people and their concerns with their level of spirituality and how it is seen and how it is imagined by whatever divine eye they imagine to be imagined in seeing their exercise. And the idea of justification just fit. That book just seemed relevant for the questions that I was getting. That's why I published it. And the show seemed relevant due to the audience that this subject was picking up. Because you have, in the traditional sense, and of course I'm speaking to people of, in that world, they're in churches and they're not feeling it anymore. They're listening to podcasts and pastors aren't doing it anymore. They're seeing that life isn't tailored to the Christian way anymore. They're seeing that the Jesus character isn't really that suitable for life in 2023. There's a lot that this character can't solve in the age that we are now living in, but that he could solve and did solve brilliantly in the ages prior. Now that there's philosophy in there that will be forever human and that will be forever for the mind, sure, but the concept is a concept that's fixed to an age where Hellenistic Judaism is just doing its thing. Oh, this is a different age. I don't feel right in church. This isn't hitting me right. How come I am hearing things, but I'm still believing something different? I know that there's more, but the more that I know, it's not being spoken of. So instead of being like, okay, so just read this, which is something I would do, Now it can be, all right, just watch this. And it became a whole different thing, moving from, for me personally, radio and then podcast, and then the guesting on radio and podcast, and then having my own program that was distributed, and going through that whole process of behind the scenes TV and how that went, and the interactions with different people. Props to Preach the Word Network. But the whole point was to, and still is, to reach that audience not fully satisfied with the experience that they're having. And so that led to many subjects arising, subjects that are presented in my book, Justification, yet now I can expound upon them. And so moving on from that first episode, talking about the idea of the concept of sin, talking about the idea of the concept of this term called Jesus Christ, talking about this idea of the concept called God, talking about this idea of the concept called heaven, this idea of the concept of the philosophy of the religious law, using everything therein in the concepts and magnifying them by other concepts and illustrations, while the underlying scope of justification is cleansing. That's what the word basically means. To be justified means to be cleansed. Well, there needs to be an idea of what to be cleansed from. And so there is, from the dialogues that I've been having, from my own personal studies, and from years of just speaking about and writing about these things, there is a different outlook for what is to be justified in the religious world, and there is a different outlook that is to be justified within the individual opinion from the religious world, and then there is a different outlook of what is to be justified from the heart of the scope that is within the Bible. So my intention is to get to the heart of the scope that is within the Bible. And it's funny because the heart of the scope that is within the Bible, it is very different than the heart of the scope of the individual opinion, and very different from the heart of the scope of the religious world. So when you're hearing someone talking about Bible, it's really, you're not really able to register it. That symbol, unless your heart has gone through something to allow it to now become relevant. And that's with every case in life, whatever we do. We are led to things due to the relevancy that life now sees within it for us. And so talking about the issue of justification, you're talking about an issue of cleansing. Well, then the issue of what to cleanse comes up. What are you supposed to cleanse? What does the Bible say is filthy? The Bible does not say secular, the secular definition of sin is what filth is. That's not how the Bible operates. Well, that's how we operate. Whatever is secular, whatever is flesh-based, and that is what we consider to be wrong, well, that is sin. That's not how the Bible moves. The Bible moves strictly on a devotional basis. What is philosophically devotional is what the Bible attacks. What is philosophically devotional is what the Bible attacks. What is philosophically devotional is what the Bible attacks. That can't be understood unless you yourself have sat down with the mind that is within the scriptures. And so drawing out those concepts and taking those concepts and drawing out illustrations for those concepts, taking those illustrations from those concepts, drawing out further themes and further principles to just get at the underlying heart of the matter, that justification is a term signifying cleansing. And if justification is a term signifying cleansing, and if the cleansing in question is nothing to do with your human being, well then what needs to be cleansed? Get the answer from Ephesians. Put off your former conversation and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. Put on the new mind and be created. This is the underlying concept of justification. And the interesting responses that I get from this, it's really interesting and fascinating to listen to and to hear. Because when you're giving Bible, that's all you're giving. But what is in response to the Bible is often something personal. It's often something opinionated. It is often something regurgitated from what another individual mind has said, because it's Bible. So you have somebody giving Bible, and that was really another thing that I wanted to do with this program, is somebody giving Bible to individuals curious about the Bible. And it is always the same thing, no matter whether it is through screen or by audio or in person. Sadness always hits the individual when they hear about what real Bible is. because that sadness is the reaction of what is within them, knowing that they need to correct the perception, and yet there is no heart to. And the perception is leading the devotional conversations, thoughts, feelings, actions, and behaviors, and that's what justification is. Correction of perception for the purpose of rebranding action, behavior, thought, and feeling in conjunction and in connection to the mind of the character that is within the Bible. When we're able to take ourselves out of it, well, then we're able to grow with the mind of the character that is within the scriptures, and that's just the underlying point.
We are to have, as is said and believed when it comes to life and religion, faith. But when it comes to exercising faith, a very crucial aspect of having and exercising faith isn't mentioned. In order to have faith in anything, we need to know what we would have faith in. This book looks into how the Bible defines the process of justification. We are supposed to know what we believe. Personal knowledge will bring life to our experience with the Bible. Get Justification to know how to safely take care of your faith.
And so, is it really that hard to hear that at the root of the philosophy that is within the scriptures is advice and counsel and wisdom on correcting the devotional lifestyle? Now, the Bible on the surface is written colorfully. It's written colorfully for the purpose of misleading the individual. Yes, the Bible is written to mislead. The Bible is written to mislead. And the Bible tells you that plainly. You know, make their hearts fat, their eyes whatever, and whatever, that they may be converted, or lest their heart understand. So the Bible doesn't really want the mind not wanting reform within it to be right within itself. It's Bible humor. It's Bible humor because if you're approaching something philosophically to take advantage of it, literally and maybe not so philosophically, well then, just as any creature of life would protect themselves from harm, so are these words. No different. The Bible is a book of words that form a single creature. And when you have a creature in nature that is not wanting to be disturbed for whatever reason, it will attack, whether it has some sort of something special within it like venom, or whether it has some sort of something within it like strength or whatever. It will do something. It will have something to make sure that its predator knows I'm alive and I am not going down without a fight. And that's also the theme within the scriptures. And that's something that for the individual wanting justification, for the individual wanting their conversation to be well, that needs to be taken into consideration. Because the longer that the conversation, and it's written in the book of Hebrews, is, you know, if you're going to hear something and then repent of something that you've heard, yet do it again, there is no more offering for sacrifice. So when you're hearing something and then the conviction within is a conviction that is moving to inquiry, yet we are remaining stout and stubborn to the opinion that is within, well then the opinion that is within is going to devour us and continue to mislead us so long as we continue to not honestly and genuinely acknowledge the call that our inward person wants us to genuinely acknowledge. And so the Bible, the Bible is written from this point of view, using popular religious paganry to get its underlying scope across. On the surface, that's what it is doing. Below the surface, which is something you can't know unless you've gone through the Bible personally, not through, meaning book to book to book, I mean exercising mind only on Bible. Exercising mind only on Bible. And I know that throughout these programs, I have been listing quotes and other things or whatever. So I'm talking about the initial birthing process of the conversation, or should I say the initial rebirthing process of the conversation. The Bible's main intention is to rebirth the conversation. That rebirth can't take place with anything except the scriptures. When you're in a state of birth, after that rebirth, well, then you have enough power to chew. You have enough power to digest. But the level of humility that goes into getting to that stage is one where the individual has to backtrack willingly. Sometimes the first step is a step backwards. Sometimes the first step is a step backwards. And that's what the Bible is wanting us to understand, is that we've been moving forward in religious denominated understanding and spiritual fanaticism. There's going to come a point in time where the living God will allow us to understand that for a fact. And it is up to us to take that step away backwards from that, to take a step forward towards the intended character that is within the scriptures.
Knowing Bible is a course for learners wanting to grow closer to themselves and to their Creator. There is a reason why we trust the Bible. There is a reason why the Bible moves us to celebrate it. There is also a reason why we feel hesitant to let the Bible's words satisfy us. Traditional religious theory isn't always satisfactory. Carrying a belief without proof will soon aggravate our thoughts and feelings. Knowing Bible is a course that is designed to wake us up to who and what our belief is. Knowing Bible is for learners that want a living experience beyond conventional religion. Don't let this educational opportunity slip away from you.
You know, I find it completely interesting, this subject. Not because that it is fascinating, but more so along the lines of the responses that I get from it. Each thing said, something pointed out that I would have never even thought of or imagined to think about, but from the other individual's perspective and what they've gone through, that's been highlighted to them. And I've come to learn that there's at least for me, and I hope it changes, but there is a silent majority. There is a silent majority that knows that there's something wrong with their devotional conversation. There's a silent majority that knows that there is something wrong with the character of their faith or of their belief. There is a silent majority that knows that the character Jesus Christ isn't getting it done, but they're not willing to say anything. That's where I come in. And I'm not I've learned from my time doing radio, just guesting, that when you say what is on a relatable level to individuals, that gives them the courage and the strength to say something else and to even reach out to you. You know, I remember in 2017 when I published my first book, being on the radio and saying really personal things related to my journey, and I'm thinking that it is the content or the philosophy that will be interesting to the listener, but in reality, what was interesting to the listener was me, was what led me into the Bible's philosophy, the events that took place that shifted my mindset, the reason for the care that I now had to take for my body and then for my mind, and how the Bible fit into that, and the development of a book from that. That seemed to be more interesting than the actual wisdom that the book had from the Bible. And so there's been a silent majority that is understanding something is wrong, not just with themselves, but with their devotional conversation. And with there being no real, because it's really difficult to go out and to hear Bible. It's really difficult to go out and to hear philosophy pertaining to Bible alone, I should say. Really difficult to go out and to hear philosophy pertaining to Bible alone. You will always hear Bible mixed in with some sort of religious phenomenon that is connected to some sort of religious denomination. It's very rare to hear an individual saying something about the Bible, from the Bible, without anything else connected to it, willingly. And so from that standpoint, and the responses that I get, both positive and negative, that just was encouragement to keep going. And the idea of justification is something that is on the mind of a lot of people. I'm seeing and still seeing it is on the mind of a lot of people, because the religious world and the whole thing, as I say, it really takes a lot out of individuals that are not being served by it. And it takes courage to keep going into that, knowing that it's not serving you. But it takes more courage to not step away, but to learn from that and to make sense of that. So Justification as a program is something designed to do that, and has been. And the illustrations from episode 1 up until even last week, just doing that and putting that into play, because from understanding the definition of Jesus and the definition of God to the Bible, all of these things I had to break down, because traditional religion convolutes all of these things. There is a definition for everything within the Bible. Who cares what your definition is? Who cares what my definition is? When you are studying something, when you are studying the Bible, and especially for personal growth and development, personal and devotional growth and development, the only thing that matters is the instructor's understanding. And the Bible is the instructor. That's the point of the Psalm. Psalm 119, all of it. Knowing more than the ancients because I stick to your words. And so that's the general experience. And it is that general experience that justification is shaped around. And that's, honestly, these years, it's a wealth of understanding and wisdom. And then you get to the garden. And then you get to Genesis chapter 1. But prior to that, looking at how Paul breaks down everything related to his philosophy and belief. So we saw this. We saw all of this from the Bible. The philosophy of the Paul within the Bible is very different from the philosophy that became the Christian religion. What Paul is calling for is not what the Christian religion is calling for. To Paul, this individual, I should say, his Jesus, is the only one that has had sin pardoned. He's the only one. He's the only one that has had sin pardoned. Why? Because the Son of God the Father, and the Son of God the Father is not Jesus. The Son of God the Father is called the Logos. The Logos decided to humble himself to enter into this human, and dying and rising with this human, offered up a gift to the willing human of eternal life and of the righteousness of the Logos, and of the gift of the Logos for ailments, however you want to talk about or deal with what that means. The only thing is that this gift is not free to everyone. You have to be underneath the ministration of the Jesus that died and that rose, who received his position due to the Logos within him. So unless you're a part of that community, you're not going to have any of your sins pardoned. Unless you're joined to that community, unless you're fellowshipping under the invisible demigod, you are not going to have any of your sins or anything like this cleansed or whatever. And then that transition from how then do you maintain such a community? How do you maintain such fellowship? Well, then we saw how Paul goes into what is called a Messiah lifestyle. You have to live a particular or a kind of lifestyle that is Messiah-based in order to receive the benefits of free righteousness, free forgiveness and pardon from sin, and free gift of the powers of the Logos through the ministry of the one that he died and rose within. So that may be the starting point. We didn't, in this program, look at how anything of the proto or the current Christian religion is, we just stayed with Paul because Paul got his fame from playing with the scriptures in a in an illogical way that manipulated the scope of things from Genesis to Malachi. So from there, looking at if this doesn't really mesh with the Bible, if this is not the general outlook of the scriptures, and it is not, I'm talking about Paul and Paul's Christ, well then how are you supposed to carry your conversation? So we moved on to that. And the underlying theme here that I haven't yet gotten to, but have gotten to just unofficially, is the idea of empathy. The idea of empathy towards the devotional conversation for such an experience to exercise and have the ability to exercise empathy with others. So the process of justification, while it is about cleansing the conversation, while it is about resurrecting and reforming the conversation's thoughts, feelings, actions, and behaviors from what it is baptized into and inherited from within the religious world, there is the process of justification, which is a process of human growth and development. Because by going through everything that is related to the conversation's transformation, it is a work on the human condition. So at the heart of the conversation's transformation is the beautifying of the human condition. We can't really get to the beautifying of the human condition without getting to the beautifying of the devotional conversation. If we are not attempting or proceeding forward into the beautifying of the devotional conversation, well then our human being will be left without conscience. Bible philosophy does not want the human being to be without conscience, and so its primary attack is against the conversation's thoughts and feelings. That's why the experience of justification, which on Justification Live, I've been talking about the Exodus experience, the wilderness, the solitary, it's all important because it all falls back down to the condition of our human being and how it will remain conditioned.
Our faith is alive. Our belief is a living structure. But what does it mean to have a working faith? What does it mean to have a belief assisting our thoughts and feelings? A Faith That Works is a book informing its reader on how to cultivate an active faith. We usually have to make our faith work. We usually need to do something in order for us to feel like our faith is alive. Is this the right way to handle our devotional experience? Find correct guidance and instruction on how to carry the body of your faith in A Faith That Works.
The idea and the thought of the human condition and its continuing condition, it leads and always, at least for me personally in my studies, back to Genesis. Always leads back to Genesis 1 to Genesis 2. And so with everything covered from episode 1 of Justification until most recently, it has been in illustrating the conversation's call for reformation. The Bible's theme over and over, the narrative from our very first dialogue together until this point in time, the narrative hasn't changed. The narrative is a repeating theme of the conversation waking up from the sleep that religious fervor has put onto it, that superstitious fervor has put onto it. We have all gone through things and we look at them the way that we look at them, but to the Bible's mind, we have to make sense of everything that we go through. So whether we're having a dream, whether we're having an experience, whether we're having a daily encounter, whether we're having a challenging conflict, Bible counsel is don't just leave it at that. Don't just leave it at that. You have to make sense of it. And once you make sense of it, you will see an underlying philosophy that goes beyond whatever thought you have, whatever encounter you had, whatever conflict going on, whatever you imagine to be phenomenal or whatever. Bible wants the individual to make practical sense of it. You can't leave it at that, because if you do, you will taint the philosophy that your individual conversation is supposed to have to edify and to empathize with another individual mind. Bible is all about service. The justification of the conversation is to lead to a practical service to other minds. Practical service to other minds. And in that practical service, there's a practical character. And in that practical character, there is a practical disposition. And in a practical disposition, or in that practical disposition, there is a landscape. And so while going through the episodes, while talking about the philosophy connected to the Bible, as strange and as deep as it may be or as it may sound, there's the cultivation of landscape. And the cultivation of landscape, no matter what I have ever studied in Scripture, it always goes back to Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. And that's what has been the focus for I don't know how many weeks. But looking at male and looking at female, never mind that to the Bible's mind, male is not man, woman is not female. These are terms and these are categories for specific instances and circumstances pertaining to a particular philosophy or code of understanding that the Bible would have its student and its patient comprehend. So when you're reading Genesis 1 and then you get into Genesis 2, in Genesis 1, you've got male and female created, sure. In Genesis 2, you've got man and woman created. The experiences of the two are very different, as we have seen. And looking at it from the Bible's perspective, and I can understand how troubling it is from a traditional perspective, but Bible perspective, trumps traditional perspective. Bible perspective trumps traditional perspective. Traditional perspective means absolutely nothing to the Bible. So, for example, there's an image that you can have of me, whether that is positive or negative. That image you have of me, it means nothing to what I have of myself. That image you have of me, it means absolutely nothing, whether positive or negative, to what I have and perceive of myself. Same thing with the Bible. Bible has a perception of its own. Bible has a mind of its own. That mind trumps and can care less about what you think of it and about what I think of it. To be able to understand the Bible without placing self into it is the beginning of a journey of an individual that cares more for the condition of their human being and their devotional outlook than anything. And so what do you do with all of that? With everything from episode 1 until this point, what do you do with that? Because you have Bible letting the conversation know that it needs to be thinking about its condition. You have Bible letting the conversation know that it needs to be thinking about its routine, that it needs to be thinking about its actions and its behavior. You have the Bible in every single one of these episodes thus far talking about, I see that your conversation is unhealthy, while you are seeing that it is. That's all Bible is about. Bible is about correcting the conversation. Bible knows the conversation is born into religious deception. Bible knows that the conversation has been sanctioned to be born into religious deception. Bible knows that religious deception is the #1 religion in the world, religious world. Bible knows that religious deception is going to continue to be promoted world without end. Bible knows that every single individual that is religiously deceived is within the religious world. Bible knows that every conversation, again, is conceived within the religious world and is therefore religiously deceived and philosophically erroneous. Bible knows and understands that such individuals are what they term to be sinners because they are erring against their human being and they are erring against the intended devotional character they are supposed to have. And so the Bible allows the reader to know, and the idea or the purpose of going through the Bible, as maybe slow as I do, is to show that the Bible knows what's going on. The only ones that don't know what is going on are you and I. So when we can understand what's going on, and when we can rationalize what is going on without the inherited or whatever inherited religious, superstitious, fanatical, phenomenal scope that we have of things in existence and in life, well then, Bible is going to begin to allow us to make sense of it. And the wisdom therein is for the purpose of allowing us to make sense of us. And the exercise of us making sense of us is so that we can have cultivated within us a ministry that only we can carry out to edify and to empathize with other individuals. So justification, while it is about the transformation of the conversation, while it is about an exodus from the blueprint of the religious world, justification is also about getting the heart ready for its human ministry, getting the devotional heart ready for its human ministry and its human service, its human ministry to other minds. We are all here for a purpose. Bible is wanting to get that out. We are all here for a purpose. I don't care. I've spoken to individuals way older than me, my same age, younger than me. We are all here for a purpose. Bible wants to bring that out. Blueprint wants to hide it. Blueprint of the religious world wants to hide it. Wants to hide purpose from you. Wants to hide purpose from me. Bible's philosophy wants to purge purpose out of the individual so that we can then serve one another. That's the theme of creation. The theme of creation. Everything was good in creation because creation served creation. Creation served creation. That's what made it good. Until we're able to serve one another's minds and in ways that are edifying and that in ways that conjure empathy, well, we're not doing anything. The whole point of justification is to get to that point. That's the top rung on that ladder of Peter. Self-sacrificing love, or self-sacrificing benevolence, or true, genuine-hearted empathy. That's the point of justification, and that's the point of every single illustration from the first episode until this point.
A genuine relationship with the Bible can be difficult. Sometimes we don't know where to begin. Sometimes we don't know how to trust our experience. Sometimes we may be afraid to get too close to our Creator. Perfecting and Reforming Personal Religion will be your guide. This book will make sure your spiritual journey is fulfilling. Don't miss this opportunity to elevate your devotional practice. Embrace the wisdom within its pages and embark on a journey of self-discovery. Grab your copy now and take the first step towards a more fulfilling and enlightened life.
There is a way to look at the things that are within the Bible. And that's the thing I want to highlight, to look at the things that are within the Bible. We have a lot of growing to do as individuals learning the scriptures. You know, when you're learning, don't speak so soon. Continue to develop thought until Bible allows you to understand that that thought is really just. Because the time that of the exodus, of our personal devotional exodus, and then that stint in the wilderness, and then that stint in building the tabernacle of the temple, that is preferable, which is something I ended with in the previous episode. That's a classroom. And to respect the classroom of the Bible is to respect the level of humility that is needed in order to carry out ministry, intended ministry, not wanted ministry. We all want to know that we need to do something with ourselves, but we can force something. So Bible doesn't work like that. Just as nobody gave themselves their belief in something that is within the scriptures, no one can give to anyone else or should I say no one can give to themselves, or also to anyone else, the ministry that life's invisible intelligence has planned for them, in conjunction with the living mind, organizing and orchestrating that experience. So justification is a process. Justification is a process. And that process is the process of allowing self to grow fond with itself. That process is the process of allowing self to step away from itself, to step away from the self of the devotional conversation, to allow the devotional conversation to gather itself together by the words that are within the scriptures alone. Remember, I called Abraham and I called him alone and I blessed him. That's in the book of Isaiah. So we have to, when it comes to this idea of justification, take serious the conversation and our care towards it, because while things again may be pleasing to the eyes, delightful to make one wise, and to be considered to be eaten as food, it is not. And at the root of the experience is the human being. The Bible wants the human being well. Well, we have to get to our human being in order to be well. To get to our human beings, to get to our devotional conversations, conscience, and to understand concepts as the Bible gives, like male and like female, like image of God, like Adam, like woman. To understand these concepts and to understand what is unspoken and to meditate on what is unspoken and to research within the Bible what is unspoken is to take the conversation's experience to the level that it knows that it needs to be. And so this program, Justification, is just for that. To take the silent majority that will not say much, but that will listen and digest for themselves. Remember, just like in the book of Acts when it says of that church at Berea, the Berean church, they thought to see if these things were so as they were taught. That's what made them memorable. Well, we have to do the same thing. We have to be willing to allow the Bible to teach us. We have to be willing to allow ourselves to reflect on what the Bible is teaching us. That's the process of justification. Justification is a process. Sure, terms and philosophy and quotes and all of that is cool, but at the end of it all, you matter. And that's something that, whether I have been speaking freely or in any of my books or when I'm speaking to someone privately, the main thing I always like to get across is that you matter. Your experiments with understanding the scriptures, though you may not know what you're studying or whatever, it doesn't matter. Keep going. Keep picking those verses apart. Keep picking those verses apart and keep picking apart what you're picking apart and keep picking apart what you're picking apart, because the idea is for the growth and the development of your human being, and that exercise will do something to help you gain empathy for another individual in whatever particular service your human being is created to put forth. That's the route of justification. And as the journey will go on and as the journey continues, we will see that brought out more, and especially through more intricate illustrations.